So now to introduce the panel. First of all, John Hooper, wave John, is our moderator. John writes for The Economist, is the Italy and Vatican correspondent for The Economist, has been in Italy for a number of years, the author of a fine book called The Italians, which spills the beans on the nature of our lovely hosts in this great country. And then on the panel, in alphabetical order, we have Sara Amrhein. Wave, Sara. There she is. Sara is an independent artisan. She makes a jewelry, I think, and runs her own business doing that. But she's also the founder and co-chair of Creative People in Florence, an important network for the Artigianati network. Then we have Giacomo Cortesi. Wave, Giacomo. There he is, waving, yep. Who's a senior executive for the Richemont group. Runs a lot of their operations here in Florence. Richemont is a group of fashion and luxury goods brands. Then we have Alessandro Sorani, who's there. Hi, Alessandro. Alessandro is Presidente of Confartigianato, which is the industry body for the artisan sector. And he's also Vice President of Polimoda, which is Florence's main training institute for fashion and other crafts industries. So that's your panel, and I will now hand over to John to make his introduction and get the debate started. Thank you.
Many thanks, Simon. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, or if you're watching us in other time zones, good afternoon or indeed good morning. I imagine that most of you are direly in need of some good news, with 4 Italian regions going into lockdown, and even those of you in Tuscany unable to go out for a drink with your friends or dine with the family at a restaurant. So the good news is that the Italian economy seems to be doing a little bit better, though devastated, than we had expected. It's certainly doing a little bit better than France or Spain, and the area which is looking most promising at the moment is actually the subject of our debate tonight, manufacturing. The IHS Market Flash Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, quite a mouthful, for Italy rose to a 31-month high earlier this week, which was in excess of what anybody had been expecting. And manufacturing, as distinct from services in Italy, because services have really taken a hiding, manufacturing seems to be doing well, exporting to countries in the Far East particularly, which haven't been so badly hit by COVID, and enjoying quite solid domestic demand. And manufacturing is far more important to Florence than some of you might imagine. The biggest single employer in this city is Baker Hughes, which makes turbines. Florence also has a big pharmaceuticals sector, but tonight we're going to be looking at mostly somewhat smaller scale businesses. Florence's craftspeople and those who work in its highly successful and skilled fashion and luxury goods sector. So without more ado, what I'd like to do is to invite each of our panelists this evening, starting with Sara, to just talk for a couple of minutes about how, from their points of view, they see the future of Florence.
Hi. Yeah, so the future of Florence, what we're seeing mostly in Creative People in Florence is that there seems to be a shift between the traditional artisans and a new generation of artisans that's coming in and I don't want to say taking their place, but using a lot of the same traditional techniques, materials, but they're using them in very new and innovative ways to create something that still replicates the history of Florence and still honors the history and the tradition of the artisans here. But there is a vast international community. So we're seeing a lot of influences from, their home countries. They're bringing them to Florence. They're opening businesses. They're mixing and matching they're learning the crafts. They're learning the techniques and the skills here that Florence is known for. And then they're using their influences from their home countries to sort of cross over with these two things. And there's a lot of really interesting things that are being made. In the past few years, what we're seeing from our community is a lot of new small businesses opening, specifically and mostly in the Oltrarno, which we know, of course, historically is always known as the artisans' quarters of Florence, but lots of those new businesses are popping up. And I think where people get stuck with a lot of that is in the area of promotion, marketing, and also the fundamentals of running a business, profiting, margins, that kind of thing, that goes into actual production and selling their products on a larger scale, getting the word out, knowing how to market their products. I think that's the biggest obstacle that we see with a lot of them.
Okay, well, we'll definitely come back to that as the debate progresses. And in order to progress the debate, I'd like to now give the floor to Giacomo Cortesi of the Richemont Group.
Thanks, John. As introduced by Sara, for me, there are two magic words, which is creativity and innovation. The end of the story, these two elements as the root in the past, in the history of the city, of the country, no? Because if you think medieval age, the Medici family, no? The Renaissance period. At the end of the story, these two elements are the strength of Florence. Exactly what Sara somehow said, that the problem that we have, not really the big group, like mine, one or the other that are investing in the city, because there is the know-how, there is the craftsman, there is the knowledge, there is the smell for beauty, The bigger problem is how to communicate this craftsman, this know-how, and the way how the small bottega are managed. Because a lot of our craftsmen know how to do a product, but they don't know how to manage the company, and they don't know how to sell the product. The perspective may be, again, a digital innovation, a digital wave, also thanks to future money that are coming from the European community, can really help to give a new, to help to write a new page. At the end of the story, if they work alone, they will go faster for a moment, but they need to work together to go farther.
Very interesting. Alessandro Sorani, I mean, from your point of view, how do things look?
Yeah, well, they look sad right now in Florence. The things are going not so bad for the artisan right now in this moment. And how do I imagine Florence in the future? I hope to see Firenze full of tourists again, but by the fact that this is not possible at the moment, well, I think that we are firstly involved, we all, in the need of the digitalization of our sector. Because especially the Botteghe in the center of Florence, right now in this moment, are suffering a lot for the missing of the tourists. And we just discovered one thing that it's very, very important for us, because we discovered that the artisans that represent the culture, the identity, and the tradition of the city are mostly liked by the foreigners. So we have to do substantially two things. One said by Sara and Giacomo, we have to improve our capacity of communication, of promoting ourselves, and this happened with the digitalization if we want to communicate worldwide. But we also need to start a better dialogue with the locals, with the Italians, because right now they are not the ones who likes the artigianato. Artisan, it's something. It's a word. We have to change the imagination of this word, because right now we imagine artigianato as something old, dusty. In Italy, when you want to talk about something that doesn't work, you say it's artigianale. So we have to work on both ways, on our promotion worldwide, but also by starting a new dialogue with the locals, with the Florentines.
That's fascinating. So you're seeing a lack of appreciation of the artigiani, of which I think Florentines, they tend to speak about them with pride, but you say that they're not actually buying their products or giving them really the prestige that they deserve. Is that right?
Yes, I'm saying this because every time you speak with a Florentine, with someone who lives here, especially someone that lived in the heart of the city 20, 30, 50 years ago, he said, oh, how do I miss the artisans in this place? How do I miss the artisans in this neighborhood? The artisans of the pride, and always the Florentine talk about the leather, the working of the leather, the goldsmiths, and they say, how do I miss them when they're not there anymore? Or how good is their work, but they don't buy it. And the crisis that we are living right now, it's almost because we don't have tourists, because the local market, it doesn't exist. And that's quite interesting because all the young people doesn't buy anything from the artisan. And also the middle-aged people, they are just browsing, they're just looking, they're missing it, but they don't buy it. So our market, it's a worldwide market, and that's quite strange. And as I said, I think that the most important thing is to change the meaning and the imagination of the word artigianale. Because right now, even the artisans, sometimes they start too much to describe the past, while they have to think not only about the future, but about the present. So they have to think about the design. So what it's like now, and not what's the line of the design lines that were fashion 40 years ago. So it's a very complicated meeting between the locals and the artisans.
You said something very interesting, and I want to put this to Sara now. I mean, you said that the young people are not buying what the artisans are creating. Now, Sara, is that your experience? And if it is, or if you think that that is also the experience of other artisans, is that, if you like, the fault of the local artisans? They're not producing stuff that would be of interest to young people.
I don't know that they're not necessarily producing things that are not, that young people don't necessarily want. I think that there is an idea behind an artisan product that it's expensive. So that if you're going to walk into an artisan studio, you're automatically going to have to spend a lot of money, which a lot of young people don't have. But that's not necessarily the case. A lot of the artisans are making products that are at a lower price range, but they're also producing products at a higher price range. So I think there might be a misconception there about what an artisan product actually is and what the cost of that product can be. I've had a couple of different locations store-wise in the center of Florence over the years. And what Alessandro is saying is absolutely true. I mean, my core customer in all of those occasions was the tourists. And it was definitely, and I know that this has a lot to do with me being an American myself, and that, being the marketing community that I generally point my business to. But that was the core customer for me in those cases as well. Young people, yes, here and there, but not as a majority of the clientele.
I mean, one of the themes that's come up in what all of you have said is the need to bring artisans from the small scale up to the large scale. Now, Giacomo, you run a business which is in many ways artigianale, but which is being done on a large scale. How do you bring artisans to expand their business? And do you think that they may be reluctant to do so?
John, for me, we have to start one step before. For example, the question that we have to raise, for example, to our younger generation is the job and the product of a craftsman cool, sexy? The beginning of the century, there was the digital internet revolution. At the beginning of 2000 in Italy, in Florence, a job like a craftsman, it was considered like a very bad one. Alessandro said before, dust, old. We miss basically one complete generation from 2000 to 2000, probably 15, 18. People, young guy, 25, 30, were not interested at all, neither in the product, nor in the job, not to learn. Even though they would have an uncle, the father, the grandfather, someone in the family that had been a good craftsman in the past, they were not interested. Now it's coming back. Probably the merge of this new wave and the digital, let's say, generation from 2000 to 2015, the merge of these two can help to increase the larger scale. Because exactly as I said before, what we miss to develop the knowledge, the information. Would be easy, no? If would have been a lot of money, you give a product of a craftsman to a famous influencer, all of a sudden there will be millions of followers in Instagram, the product will be sold out in probably 2 hours, but we cannot do that. So maybe with the institution, with Alessandro, the region, the mayor, you have to strengthen all these guys together, all these craftsmen, all this know-how, and give the proper visibility. This is the only way to give to jump on another page, to jump in the world. Otherwise, you remain just in Florence, and you are seen just by the tourists that are coming there. Meanwhile, the world is big, and you open a new page.
So do you think that perhaps Florence might have a platform, a digital platform, on which the craftspeople could advertise their wares or could be featured?
Exactly, something like that. Then we can also play with big digital player. I'm not telling without naming, no, but we know that we have a digital distribution, and which is super cool, and then can arrive really door to door. The problem is again the visibility, but the visibility is linked to an investment. And as we said before, the craftsman is he knows very well how to do products, but he doesn't have any clue how to export, present, communicate. It's really, we are lacking this kind of knowledge.
Now, is that maybe where the EU funds, which are hopefully going to arrive in Italy around about the middle of next year, it looks like now, a pretty massive wave of money, if the government is to be believed, more than 200 billion, some of which doubtless will come to Florence. Sara, starting with you, how would you like to see that money spent if it can come the way of the artigiani of Florence?
Yeah. Well, I think Giacomo is absolutely correct in saying that there needs to be some kind of very big promotional and marketing plan that goes behind all of this to promote the artisans and make sure that they are just as important as the Duomo and as the David, because they are, and they're an integral part of the history here. But another way that I think we could really make use of funding is by incorporating some design weeks like you see in a lot of other major cities. We have a design week in Florence, but it's not something that's run by the city. It's not something that has a whole lot of backing behind it. So if we can do a series of things like that, a design week, a jewelry week, a real fashion week, an artisans week, something that's going to bring people from other parts of the world here as an attraction. And it's not necessarily going to be the same kind of tourists that we've been seeing for the past 10 or so years. These are going to be people that are coming with a specific interest. They're coming here specifically to support, to see, and possibly even, buyers from larger corporations or companies or store owners from other cities that want to incorporate those products into their product lines around the world. And there's also a lot of cross promotion that can be done with that. Whereas something like, Berlin Jewelry Week, to take an example, there can be cross promotion between those. Florentine artists can then go there during their design weeks, and we can host their artists here. So I think collaborating and, a much more promotion and marketing behind the artisans.
Alessandro, how would you spend the money?
Well, I hope that with all the money that will come to Florence, we can do a lot of things. But and I agree with Sara that an artisan week, it would be something very, very great for us, especially trying to do it during the Mostra dell'Artigianato, which is normally held at the end of April, or a platform. But as you said before, that would be very interesting. But if I have to choose one thing, I would say education, but not only the education or the preparation to do the job, to do the artisan's job, but education for the management in small enterprises. Because as you said before, we have problems by getting bigger. If I think to all the artisans that started a brand in the afterwar period, they had not only a preparation in doing their job, in textile, wood, silver, gold, and etc. They were also prepared in promoting their activity and in managing an enterprise in a growing time. Because the small enterprises here in Tuscany, especially in Florence, are great. They do unique things, but they don't know how to grow. And sometimes they're afraid to grow. And the limit are not just the taxes, are not just the law, it's something cultural. As Giacomo said before, we had a sort of generational gap in our country when the older artisans said to their children, oh, no, don't join us here at the Botteghe, go and study something else. Law schools were full, economy schools were full. Only in the last 5 years, we saw the coming back of the young people to the artisan professions. I really hope that they will bring promotional skills and also management skills, but we have to be guided. And I think that the education, it will be the key. But I repeat, not only professional education, not only artistical education, also management education. If we see what's happened in TV for the kitchens, for the chef, that after seeing them in TV, a lot of schools of managing restaurants and something developed, and a lot of people now are trying to do this. We have to bring artisans back to be cool, and especially to be guided by the knowledge of the management of a small enterprise to become bigger and bigger.
You just touched on something there that could actually do even more good than EU money, which is perhaps to have a program on Italian television that focuses on craftspeople and somehow involves people in the often fascinating things that they do and the often fascinating ways in which they achieve the effects that make their product special. Giacomo, I mean, how would you see this money being spent?
You know, John, basically, if you look at what, for example, the big maison of luxury are playing now, the sales, how they manage the showroom. Just imagine that in the past fashion weeks, there was no chance to do the real fashion week, the défilé, as called, red carpet. There was the digital showroom. We built a lot of our maison in a really successful and fantastic way, a digital showroom, something which is so real, even though it's artificial, but it's so real. When everyone in the world can enjoy the digital experience, can see the product, can even touch the product, and enjoy a bespoke experience. If I would have money, I would invest in digital. At the end of the story, we have to move out from Florence to the world. And to do it, we have to learn from the big guy. The big guy used the digital showroom. Why we cannot connect our Botteghe together, make a lot of digital showroom and show in Tokyo, New York, Shanghai, Beijing, wherever. Love, because made in Italy, made in Florence is love everywhere. We just know, we just find a way to make it known everywhere.
And that would probably appeal to Brussels because they are putting big emphasis on two things, green and digital. And if you can come up with projects that match one or other of those categories, you're far more likely to get funds than if you come up with something that doesn't fall within those categories. I think probably we've talked enough among ourselves to have hopefully stimulated some of those out there on Zoom or on Facebook Live. I noticed that Simon's appeared.
Yes, I have popped up again because I'm going to help you at this point, John, as mentioned at the beginning. So anybody who wishes to intervene with a question or comment on the Zoom, just put your hand up virtually in the chat section. And if you want to make a comment on Facebook Live, post it in the comments and it will be relayed to me and I'll read it out. And I see that we do have Beatrice Bagari Stoffi would like to make a question on the Zoom. So Beatrice, if you want to appear, there you are. Off you go, the floor is yours.
Buonasera a tutti. So thank you for this very interesting discussion. My question is to Giacomo, but maybe he has already answered to me, because I was thinking to the event that Dolce & Gabbana arranged a couple of months ago, at the beginning of September or end of September, something like that. And I think involving a lot of artisans of Florence, and there was a nice communication. There were articles in the newspaper and so on. How do you think we could attract as much as possible big name of the fashion to know the supreme quality of the artisans of Florence, and have them involving the artisans as well? But I know that you have already, in a way, answered to me because you are talking about digital. But do you think there will be other ways to attract this collaboration, to enhance the collaboration?
Thanks, Beatrice. As said, for me, there should be two steps. First of all, you must be aware. You must show. Digital showroom, which is called digital showroom, but it's like a Windows. Then at the end of the story, thanks with the support of Alessandro, with Confartigianato, whatever, you can also move outside. Because if you do, let's say, a show that is going around the world, maybe a week there, because there is a lot of all over the world. I'm thinking to Tokyo again, Shanghai, Beijing, Seoul, but even in US. There is a lot of moment fair where you can really show the craftsmen. In this time, there is in Beijing the fantastic exhibition about super craftsmen. There is Homo Faber in Venice, which will come in September. Then you can really give the visibility to the high end. You make a presentation on digital and then you move. Because at the end of the story, today the problem is that the people cannot come. So we have to move to them. And the only chance is to use the power of digital. And then we can follow physically. They will love it, I'm sure.
John, Alessandro has messaged me saying he'd like to intervene on this one too. So, Alessandro.
Okay, Alessandro.
Okay, it's about this question of Dolce & Gabbana, what Beatrice just asked, and I was there with my artisans because we were so proud that Dolce & Gabbana chose our artisan to go there, so I represented them, but it was obviously an amazing occasion of visibility. It's something incredible for us. But what I was saying before about the culture of also of our artisans, some of them were afraid about this occasion. Some of them just said, oh my God, what happens if I receive too many orders? I have to grow. Well, let's think twice before participating, because what happens to my bottega, I have to work for them. While we were saying, come on, that's the biggest occasion of your life. But really, some of them were really, really afraid of it. So we have to, as I said before, while talking about education, we have to support them also in developing a different culture, because if you receive too many orders, that's business, that's pill, that's good. So this is...
Do you think that the artisans are deterred by the obstacles in the Italian system to growing small companies, or do you think it's something more visceral?
I think that the Italian laws, Italian taxes, a lot of them are really, really afraid by growing, because they think that, oh, if I stay at this time, I don't have to grow, I'm feeling fine, I'm good. But I think that it's not only the taxes, not only the fiscal question, I think it's cultural. I think it's something that they are really, really afraid of growing for cultural reasons. That's the great difference between the artisans today and the artisans yesterday. We are in the city from where Gucci started, from where Salvatore Ferragamo started, and then came back. And that generation was brave, was bold, was they were so visionary. Right now, most of the artisans are really afraid of growing. Also because of the laws, also because of the limitation. Of course, yesterday it was easier, because right now you have to pay a lot of money for a person that comes to work for you, even if he doesn't know to do nothing. So you have to pay someone who starts working with you the same as someone who's working for you from 10 years. That's a problem, but that's not the only one. It's also a cultural problem for me.
Giacomo, I'd just like to bring you in on that. I mean, is that a problem? Are the laws on such matters as redundancies, the rules on taxation, do they limit you in any way, or?
You know, more than the tax, what somehow scaring external investment is the laws. When something happens, you never know what will happen, because it will take 3, 4, 5 years. If you go to a judge, you know, for our investors from Switzerland, from Germany, for example, this is something that is really scary. The insecurity and uncertainty of, you never know if you're guilty or not guilty. Whatever it happens is always a gray zone. This is more worrying than the real tax. To work, to pay a craftsman, to have a fantastic product, to sell the product, to make good margin, this is fine. The fear is when something happens, you never know what can really happen. No? And this is the gray zone of Italy, which is somehow we need to, again, unfortunately, is a cultural problem, because it's true. This is not something that you can change one day from the other.
Yeah, this actually, some years ago, the British authorities conducted a survey of small and medium-sized companies that were not invested in Italy, asking them why they were not invested in the country. And the overwhelming majority of responses indicated that the big problem was judicial uncertainty. If I don't get paid, I'm going to have to wait maybe 9 years to get my money back. And I'm not prepared to do that. It's much easier for me to go to Germany or Bulgaria or wherever. Now, I see that from the chat that I have up on the side of my screen that there are other questions waiting to be asked. Right, Simon?
That's correct. Before you do that, I've just got one comment coming in from Facebook from Wynne Gavin, who says, I quote, "Love the theme week idea for artisans. Definitely agree, a variety of attendees, visitors for the different themes." That's just a comment from Wynne Gavin. And up on the chat here, I see that Sara Baker would like to intervene. So Sara, reveal yourself and unmute yourself, and the floor is yours. Aria, off you go.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm wearing Sarah's earrings.
Thank you.
Very beautiful they are too, if I may say.
Yes, they are. They're quite stunning. So this is less of a question than an idea. It's something I've been thinking about for a while. A large pop-up store in New York City of Florence, like Firenze pop-up. Pop-up stores are huge now in New York. I mean, not now, nothing's huge now, but before COVID, pop-up stores were a very important part of commerce in New York, because nobody wants to commit to these huge real estate infrastructure and the monthly payments. So it's a good way for real estate to have people in, but also New Yorkers love to shop. And there's a great story in the New York Times from October 28th called "The New York Store Where Furniture is Theater." And there's a store in New York called ABC Carpet and Home that used to have Italian products. I'm talking 20, 30 years ago. I was an interior designer. I used to buy a lot of Italian products for my clients, sheets, you name it, lighting, tables. And I think that America would be interested in that kind of retail experience again. Not all of America, maybe not the red states, but, and the Italian trade agency was looking for someone to do investment. I don't know if they actually ended up hiring somebody, but I would definitely go to the Italian trade agency and start thinking about it, because I think next summer, people are going to be ready to go out and they're going to want to see things, and they're going to want to see real things. And Florence has everything, everything.
Sara, can you just explain for those of our viewers, listeners who don't know what a pop-up store is, how exactly they work?
Oh, okay. So a pop-up store is a store that's in a retail space that that they haven't decided to be there forever. Like, it depends on what the landlord decides to do. They'll give them 3 months or 6 months. One of the things that was going on in New York before COVID was designers would take a pop-up store for a couple of months, maybe just at the end of their season, and they would sell, you know, whatever they hadn't sold to the stores. Actually, also in London, it's a huge thing in London.
Yeah, it is.
So, so yeah, and they call it a pop-up store because it's not a location that a store has decided to stay in and sign a contract for. And then, and as I said, the infrastructure for putting a store together is so expensive, and a lot of people can't afford to do that. A lot of business people don't want to do that anymore. So, but I'd be happy to help.
Absolutely, that's a great idea. I think it's definitely something that you know, it's an investment for a lot of the designers, like you said, to open a retail space, to have a space like that, but also to do something on their own. Even, you know, there are many sites out there where you can rent a pop-up space in New York City or in London, but the fees on something like that for one individual artisan or designer are much too high. And then you factor in travel expenses and everything that goes into that. So having something that features a group of designers, absolutely, it's a fantastic idea. Yeah.
Something similar was tried in China, I believe, by, I see Alessandro is energetically nodding, where you know, the costs are even higher getting out there and so on and so on. And that by banding together, they were able to bring a lot of small companies to China to pitch their wares.
Alessandro suggested to me that he's got a comment to make here. Alessandro, go.
Yes, it was just about this, what John just said about China, because we, with Regione Toscana, tried to do the same, a sort of pop-up store in the big malls in China and Russia, but we had a lot of problems, again, with some artisans, because they were afraid of leaving their bottega for a long time, because they said, I have to be close to my objects, because I think that nobody else can describe them as I do. So they were just afraid of not communicating it very well. So that was a problem. And another problem was that this kind of things, this kind of projects, by my point of view, are great, has to be free for the artisans. because we did something in Milano with Bottega Toscana, again with Regione Toscana. It was totally free for the artisans, and they joined it, and they went there, and they do a very, very good job in terms of selling. But if you have to pay something, sometimes it's very, very, very expensive, because you have to pay insurance, you have to pay the travel for yourself and for the objects, and you have to rent a place there. So by one point of view, it's very, very expensive, but by another point of view, the artisans sometimes are not only jealous of their objects, they are afraid that no one else can describe them as they do. So again, we have to prepare something, because Artigianato is not just an object to be sold. It's something that has to be communicated, narrated. You have to speak about it, because you don't buy an object, you buy a story, and you buy a person's story. So that's another obstacle in this kind of project, which I find very, very, very important. So every kind of project like this would be embraced by us and promoted by us to all the Florentine artisans.
But other people can tell the story. I mean, isn't there a problem here of control, of not wanting to relinquish control, not wanting to let go, that perhaps extends into other areas? I don't know. Do you find people are reluctant to pass on their trade secrets to their apprentices, for example?
I mean, I can comment on that as an artisan myself. And I will say that up until about a year ago, I really was experiencing that issue myself. But I want to say to all of the artisans out there who are listening and who are thinking in those terms and might, be reluctant to do something like that, I can tell you from experience that once you let that go, it is incredibly freeing. In order to be able to do that, it's incredibly freeing to let someone else tell your story for you, because we get so caught up in our own story that we only know how to tell it one way. But somebody coming to our product or to our work from a different angle or a different perspective might see something in it that we didn't see, and they're going to explain things to to the public in a way that we may have never thought of. Finally, last year, I took on my first apprentice, and I allowed her to actually work and create the product for me, and starting off with things that didn't require the highest skill level, but I was able to produce more product than I've ever been able to produce before, and in turn, I was able to create more revenue for my business that way. So I think that what Alessandro is saying is absolutely true, but I think it also comes back to the question of education that we were talking to before, and educating the artisans that it's okay to give up the control and to allow other people in, and that's only going to help us. It's only going to help us grow our businesses and our companies.
Sarah, it's funny because in a big corporation, it's mandatory and you are awarded if you pass the know-how. In a small company, they fear to pass the know-how because know-how is power.
Right.
And coming back to what Sarah Baker said, which is very important, I give you a number. The most successful company under COVID are the ones that are using digital and pop-up, not the historical and classic brick and mortar. So the mix between digital and pop-up brought the company more successful because they are more agile, more flexible. Let's say that the ones that are managing the business through a digital and pop-up and light retail are more Darwinian, in a Darwinian way, more strong and able to tackle the challenge of the pandemic in a more, let's say, agile and flexible way.
I noticed there's a comment come in here that I feel there's both fear and lack of trust to overcome. I wonder whether one way to get over that is perhaps to strengthen the intellectual property rights, or explain to craftspeople that they are protected by international law. If they invent, they create something, that they own it. Or does that, I noticed that Giacomo now is a little bit shaking his head about that. I mean, does that then come back again to the legal or judicial uncertainty issue?
It's even more complex, because it is true that within the European Union, including the US, and the rule of patent and protection of the identity of something creation is pretty strong. On the other side, we have to admit that not the whole world are behaving in such a fair way. Without mentioning which country or whatever, but maybe we may understand what I'm talking about. It's also true that in some area of the world, it's not so easy to protect good ideas. This is the reason why, if you teach a craftsman, if you teach the secret that are coming maybe from the past, from your parents, grandparents, from the history, then you can lose your know-how, you can lose your power, your job. So I can also understand the fear. So in theory, it's true, but in practice, it's not so easy. And on top of it, to protect ideas and patent something is pretty expensive now.
Yeah.
Simon, do we have any other questions coming in?
There's two. There's actually one I wanted to do myself, but I'll hold that back because the audience must have their chance. There's one on the chat coming in saying, could someone speak to the tension between history and innovation?
Any volunteers for that?
Sara was saying noises.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is a lot of push and pull with history, and I think there is an idea that in order for an artisan product to be authentic and to be truly Florentine, that it has to be a historical product. It has to be something that originated hundreds of years ago, and that any diversion from that is dishonoring, for lack of a better word, the traditions of the city. So absolutely there is. But in creative people in Florence specifically, I can certainly speak to our community. We're seeing a lot of traditional techniques, but we're seeing them used in new and different ways. We're not seeing the same, for example, motifs, or we're not seeing the same, type of bookbindings, or the same type of woodwork. We're seeing woodwork. We're seeing those techniques and those skills being used, but they're creating something innovative, something new, and something exciting. We see a lot of really exciting work from our end.
It's interesting in the field of gastronomy that you have many Italian chefs who take traditional recipes and then improvise, often minimally on those, but create something that is quite new and exciting. And maybe that is the way ahead, a kind of a blend whereby you extract what is traditional, but then you improvise upon it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, John, if I may, my observation, oblique stroke question.
Can I say something about tradition and innovation? Because I think, well, tradition is a well-done innovation. No, when you're innovating something that it's very, very good in the years, that becomes tradition. And the Botteghe that built Florence big in the Renaissance, they were so innovative. And right now, tradition, it's becoming a sort of excuse not to, because of the lack of innovation. And I think that just what Sara said, I think that the young artisans are bringing back innovation, trying to mix it with the tradition. And I really thank the young who are coming back to the Botteghe, because they are bringing real innovation, but by trying to do a sort of fusion of tradition and innovation. And the important thing is that on what we said before, that the great gap, the great hole in the artisans in Florence, which kept away the young people from the Botteghe, it's now replaced by the young who are coming back, and the innovation it's starting back, not only in promotion, but also in production. So the young generation, it's very, very innovative, and soon there will be a new tradition of the Florentine artigianato. Thank you, and sorry, Simon, for interrupting.
No, it's much more important to hear from you than to hear from me. But no, and actually what I'm going to say, in a sense, picks up on that, because what I'm hearing in this conversation is that there's something very special, in fact, genuinely unique about the brand of Florence. So Made in Florence is speaking a very loud and attractive message to the world. And that is bound up in the astonishing cultural patrimony of the city, both built and created by artisans from the medieval time onwards, because of course the great artists of the Renaissance were all artisans, more than artists, because the modern concept of artists hadn't really been invented. They were really good at painting and sculpture and architecture, and they had Botteghe to mass produce it for their wealthy clients. So that tradition is actually bound up with innovation. And I think that's really, really important. But the point I was really going to make was that this extraordinary brand of Florence, which is so attractive, creates a quite astonishing opportunity for the Botteghe, for the artisans, and for the bigger manufacturers. Because if you can respect that tradition and play into the strength of that brand, the whole world wants a piece of it. If you start looking at the marketing, we heard a story a year ago in one of our sessions in Morgan Fiume's Lungano Chats about a Botteghe which had sold out everything they had in one afternoon. And the way that it happened was that a Chinese tastemaker, who was also a huge social media player, had come by on the Sunday afternoon by previous arrangement to the Botteghe, and in real time on social media was communicating to a huge audience back in China about the wonders of this particular Botteghe, and was taking orders in real time. And so by the end of 2 or 3 hour walk around, as the tastemakers are telling her audience back home, look at this beautiful thing here, and look at this beautiful thing here. And you know, this is you are getting an authentic piece of the Florence history and craft skill, and here it is. The whole lot was bought online in real time within a couple of hours. Now, you harness that kind of technology with the brand, the sky really is the limit for innovative, entrepreneurial, and ambitious artigianali in the city.
So the moral of that story is the next time that Chiara Ferragni comes to the Uffizi, you get her to come across the other side of the river and walk around amongst the artigiani, you know? I noticed that we got a comment here that's come in from Christine with a practical suggestion. It seems that linking websites could be a simple, low-cost way of promotion. For example, successful wine exporting companies or even accommodation could have links to Tuscan craft products. I don't know whether any of that sort of thing is going on already. Alessandro?
Yes. We did some experiments with it, and they worked. They worked. Especially, we did 2 experiments. The first one was with Amazon. We had a Florence section in Amazon that went very, very well at the beginning, and after that it was just disappeared in the big Amazon website. The second thing that's still working, not right now, obviously not at this moment, was the collaboration with Airbnb, because you can buy your experience online. So when you choose your room, your apartment in Florence, you have a section where you can explore the experiences that you can do and live in the artisans bottega. But well, the comment and the suggestion is very, very, very important, because also with booking or with the great sites of booking accommodation, and also the wine exporting company, it could be very, very interesting. That worked, because worked not only the visits, not only to buy, but also the experience. What we saw was that a lot of people really liked not only to buy, not only to see, but just to live like an artisan for one day. They just go there and make their own fiorino, make their own ring, and that was quite good. We did an interesting thing 2 years ago as Confartigianato. We did Artigiano per un giorno. So we bring all the assessors, the mayor, Dario Nardella, and all the others for one day in a bottega. Every one of them chose one kind of work, and they did it. And that was a very, very important example for some other people from Florence to do the same. But it was very, very, very important for bringing that experience inside the Airbnb site, because we really like to know how the artisans live and work. So the artisans are real an experience. Entering inside a bottega, it's not just entering in a place to buy something or to see something, it's an experience. And I think that we should go on with this, and maybe enlarging it with the wine exportation companies and the accommodation. So that's a very, very good idea. Thank you.
I see that the clock is ticking towards 7 o'clock. So I think we probably got to the point where we need to wrap up. And what I'd like to do is just ask each of our panelists for a takeaway, something that those who are watching us, listening to us on Facebook Live and on Zoom can take away from this discussion, just in a very, very short nugget, a very short thought. Sara.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what I would say is that collaboration is key. Collaboration between those of us who are supporting the artisans in Florence and wanting to promote the artisans in Florence, and us putting our heads together and finding out the best ways of doing that. I'm also going to just take 1 second and also mention on top of Alessandro's comment that, or on the comment about digitalization and promotion and that kind of thing, Creative People in Florence has just launched an app, a mobile app that is a catalog essentially of artisans in Florence. We're at the very beginning stages of all of this, and we'd certainly like to grow that community, and we'd certainly like to add more artisans to that. But it is a place where people can go and they can locate and they can find the artisans, both virtually online, but they can also do it here in the city. There's a map. They can, if they're walking around the city, they can find hidden bodegas, and they can walk in and meet the artisans that way. So
Terrific. Okay, thank you, Sara. Giacomo.
Florence is the home of culture, the home of history. We are creating dreams. Now the challenge is how to let the other enjoy our dreams. Money are coming from the European community. Let's find a smart way to invest them the proper way. Let's link to university, to big player, Amazon, YNAB Group, whatever, that can help our smaller craftsmen to become big in the world.
Terrific. Alessandro.
Well, something Sara just said, the importance of collaboration. Well, I think that's very, very important, a word not very well known by our artisans. I hope in the collaboration of all the bloggers, all the communicators, please help us to communicate better our magical works. And if I have to say something, buy artisan, please buy artisan, buy the artisan from the artisans of Florence.
Thank you, Alessandro. Simon, I'm going to hand back to you now.
Thank you very much indeed, John, and thank you to our panel. I think that was a very interesting discussion and good engagement from the audience. Thank you all very much for participating and engaging with the discussion. The next edition of the Firenze NOW series, The Future of Florence, is about tourism, the tourism for the future, and that's coming up in 2 or 3 weeks' time on the 18th of Wednesday, the 18th of November. It's quite soon. That'll be an interesting session on tourism. I have to end with my traditional reminder that if you are so minded and have enjoyed the session, it would be very good if you could make a small donation to keep the Institute going in this dark and difficult time. Sara's just posted on the chat our Just Giving site. Any contribution you feel you could make would be most appreciated. But thank you more than that for your participation and your attendance. And we will see you all in a couple of weeks' time for tourism. And of course, our continuing Wednesday lectures and art history programs, which are all happening online, even though I'm sad to say that once again, the library is closed by the new DPTM for the next month or so. So thank you very much to the panel, to John, to Sara, to Alessandro, to Giacomo, and to all to the audience, and have a good night.
Thank you very
Bye,
much. Bye-bye, Sam. Bye. Bye, John.
Hey,
Thank you.
thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.